Hello, dear friends. It is our sincere pleasure to welcome you again. Today we will talk with the esteemed Igor Mikhailovich Danilov.
Greetings.
Igor Mikhailovich, in the previous video, we touched upon an extremely profound and fundamental topic of how information, or to be more precise, how an image, a dominant image, affects our entire life, which also applies to the state of a person's health and his relationships with people around him, and how it affects our world in general. Therefore, we sincerely thank you for revealing the mechanisms of placebo and nocebo effects, because indeed, despite the fact that nowadays that very placebo effect is actively used in healthcare in clinical trials of new medicines, it is generally unknown to a wide circle of people. Moreover, this effect even extends far beyond healthcare itself, so
Of course, it extends beyond healthcare.
definitely.
The effect of placebo and that very nocebo is present in all aspects of our existence and permeates our entire life. And it is precisely by means of these effects and stable images that we've been manipulated for 6,000 years.
Whoa. You know, Igor Mikhailovich, in the previous video you said, who doesn't want people to know about this and why? This certainly makes us think about who is manipulating us and for what purposes. And you know, the well-known statement that the one who owns information owns the world is already regarded in a new way through the prism of the knowledge given in the last video. Already different facets of this information are being revealed.
I'll put it this way, you see, it's good to be the first to know some information that you can use for your business or something else. However, to know is one thing, but it doesn't mean to own the information. Information is owned by those who possess it long before it appears in this world and begins to change our life in one way or another. The one who creates and controls it is the one who owns it. Whereas if we have learned something, somewhere on a minor domestic level, in politics or business, you know, it's fine. However, we never think about who creates it, for what purposes, and what in fact is going on. I'll give you a simple example. For understanding, it's been 6,000 years since we entered into chaos, and this chaos is only growing and intensifying. It really is. We are constantly divided and constantly manipulated. Slavery has not been eliminated, it has only been refined, and everyone understands that. No one is safe nowadays. All of us now, all people currently living here in this world, are in a state of being manipulated. This is really true. Some people, out of personal pridefulness, think that they own and manipulate something. Yes, there are such capabilities. However, they don't even realize who embeds certain ideas in them, which they implement afterwards, and how. So those who embed these ideas are the ones who actually own the information. As for those who fulfill someone else's will, do they really own the information? You see, I would compare our life. Well, let's take, okay, we are ordinary people. Our lives are our lives. As for those who think that they rule the world, they always have an opposition. They always have some opposing, let's say, coalitions, interests.
Coalitions of interests or influence.
Yes, business companies, political circles, some kind of powers. So there's always division. It would seem we are sitting and waiting to see that if a prince changes, everything will change. The prince changes, but in fact, things only get worse and worse. Although sometimes certain problems seem to be solved, and so on. But if we look, we are constantly losing certain freedoms. We need to make a lot of effort to regain a little bit of these freedoms, but they return merely as illusions. Then they disappear again, and everything gets clamped down even more and more. We seemingly change princes, we vote for one or another, some opposition comes to power, which promises us mountains of gold. These golden mountains disappear somewhere, and our freedoms disappear somewhere too. But why is this happening? I'll answer, friends. You know, there's such a thing as a dog race, a competition, just like in equestrian sports, where horses are running and competing, so are the dogs. People put a mechanical bunny in the front, and a pack of dogs run after it. So, these dogs are actually all the business companies, that fight and compete among themselves, all the political forces, and all the interests of public organizations that in one way or another affect business, politics, or whatever else. In other words, we are all running in a strictly defined direction, and that run is controlled by someone who is controlling that bunny. That's the answer.
The direction is the same for everyone.
100%.
It doesn't matter who gets there first.
It doesn't.
It's all in one direction.
No matter how we change the components, the sum will not change, and the result will be the same. Therefore, information is owned by those who create it and make everyone run in the direction they point. We talked about them. It's an ancient organization of the keepers. It seems they do not exist. In fact, if someone looks at this from a side, he might say, "What are you telling us? This cannot be happening. How come? In our world, there are so many smart people, presidents, all kinds of agencies, and so on." But the paradox is that if you look closely, despite the war and even the opposing ideologies, leaders are doing what these so-called architects of this world want. This is true. When they launch some idea of theirs into masses, the narrative is the same, and nobody can counter it. You see how simple everything is?
We're transmitters of the same idea.
Absolutely right. They are not generators. They are, as you said, retransmitters of this idea, of the idea that was embedded in them. You see how simple everything is? However, many people think that it is their idea. Why? Placebo works. A dominant image has been created for them, and they perceive that image as their own.
As their own idea.
Of course. We discussed with you the builder of a house when an idea was instilled in him. But he perceived it as his own, and he was already proving it as his own to the one who had instilled it in him. You see how simple everything is?
Igor Mikhailovich, we've touched upon the subject of the keepers. Our viewers asked us the following question. But surely they are aware of what kind of world we live in and of what is happening to the climate. What are they counting on in today's climate reality when this crisis is getting worse?
I understand the question. Of course, many people will think and say, well, we are all going to die. What do they count on? How? If they are so smart, if they own our minds, they should definitely know about the cycle and what is coming. Of course they know. They do. That's why they've been doing so much to make us forget about it. You see, if it wasn't for, let's say, the scientists of this world who noticed the strict cyclical pattern that occurs every 12,000 years and that every 24,000 years, these catastrophic events become more pronounced and many times more powerful. We wouldn't know about it, would we? Well, we would know. It would be difficult to prove, because nobody takes our word for it. People need proof. You know, there are some intelligence officers who don't care about emotions. They need facts. They look at facts, excuse me, like a dog looks at cabbage, and they don't understand what to do with it, because it's not actually meat. This is really so. They seem to understand it, but they don't see it. A simple question, why do we have a lot of agencies, but they do not see elementary things? Isn't this true? They don't see who controls them and how they are manipulated. There are plenty of such examples. When, excuse me, literally a few people can deceive entire countries by manipulating the right people. But these are actually facts. Empires were destroyed simply by setting a certain vector. Certainly, the same fellows are well aware of the cycle, but they also know that our humanity has always passed through those cycles. And it is interesting, what we'll be discussing now may also sound like fiction. But if we read ancient epics and take a look, from time immemorial it has been said that there were gods who controlled
weather, yes, exactly.
Weather, climate, and things like that. In other words, El possessed technologies that allowed him to control various climatic manifestations. But note, not the cycle. He couldn't control the cycle. If he could, he wouldn't have died. That's the whole answer. Naturally, those fellows understand and know that their god El is able not only to bring back their Eternals, meaning their direct leaders, but also to stop what is happening, and that's what they hope for. Yes, this sounds like a fairy tale and fiction. You know, on our planet, there are many various secret organizations, various orders, and so on. And they have their own understanding of this world, their own statutes, and their own religion, so to say. These fellows have the same things. However, there is a little nuance that can also be traced in their activities. For 6,000 years, they have had power. And for 6,000 years, they've been doing everything to create conditions for El to return. They need it. They are the keepers. They are servants of their masters. And their most important and most necessary goal, the goal of their organization, is to create conditions for bringing back El, who would manage to bring the Eternals back to life, that is, their immediate leaders, their masters, so to say. That's a noble goal if you look at it from their perspective, and everything seems to be fine. But I have a simple question. Why haven't they done that? After all, they've had such conditions many times. It is clear that El will never exist again, and there is, let's say, a no less competent and powerful force that doesn't let them do that. This force has no right to interfere in our lives, but it has the right to stop their activities sometimes. It does have this right, and sometimes opposes them. But they themselves don't want that to happen, because their 13th one, well, let's say that hand, that organizer and manipulator of all the information they have their own hierarchy, their own laws, and so on. And so we can say that now, at least that's how others perceive him, he's like God on earth. It's such a slight simony. I mean, he's sort of a micro-El. And here's a simple question. An ordinary man, endowed with serious knowledge, indeed a serious one, and he really understands not only how placebo works, but also a great many other things that we do not know nowadays, including scientific knowledge and much more. So, a person who feels like he is God, who can create controlled chaos and skillfully manipulate it, does he want the real God to return? In fact, a man just like him, who would not just regain his power, but would also put additional leaders between himself and these fellows, at a time when this man is God. Here's the answer to why there is actually no El to this day. Not only because there was opposition, but also because they themselves do not really want that. That's the whole answer.
They are hostages of the established system themselves.
Absolutely. Well, in fact, what is happening now basically closes down their project as well. There will be no El, there will be nothing, and they will be gone too. They may fail to make correct judgments about this, because they have their own mindsets and hopes. You know, like in any organization, they have a written plan of action.
All the more so in the context of the worsening climate, of what is happening.
What is happening now with the climate is scary. I would say today, you know, again, this is our point of view. We cannot get this information across to those who need to hear it, and all the more so we cannot influence their acceptance of this information in any way. Unfortunately, we don't have such capabilities. But if we look correctly at what is happening today, I personally believe that all our princes of this world, including those keepers and everyone else, should have long been sitting at the same table and solving this problem together. They should have buried all the hatches of war. They should have stopped all the quarrels and divisions. They should have worked actively to create a unified, powerful economy in this world. And they should have opened all the borders because it is essential for us to adapt and get used to this already now, if they really want our civilization to have a future. Well, we don't have a civilization, but let it be a community. It is clear they may not understand what a civilization is and its value, but there should be at least some instinct of self-preservation. Don't people themselves want to live? It is clear that many powers that be are already at an advanced age, although again, modern technologies would allow them to prolong their lives as well, to regain their health and youth, to enjoy life and to create conditions under which not only their children but also their grandchildren would live long and happy lives, as well as the entire humanity. Everyone should have been sitting at the same table a long time ago, but it's not happening, and is unlikely to happen, as it seems to me. Although who knows, everything depends on people and their choices. But when I look at the fact that today all the records of our ocean warming have been broken again, and at the way this is presented in the media, honestly speaking, it scares me. I'm scared that people do not take it seriously and fail to understand the whole essence of what is happening. Perceiving it with some kind of excitement, like at a competition, sort of, the ocean has broken new records, it has warmed so much, it has never been this warm before. This is as if someone has won a competition, moreover with a result that has never been seen before. Well,
This is scary.
seems to me this is wrong, this is irresponsible. When people have a misunderstanding of what is happening, what is actually happening after all? Just look at how certain countries are flooded. Why is that happening? Because the ocean is getting warmer. The warmer the ocean becomes, the more moisture evaporates. Indeed, the vapor rises into our atmosphere, then it condenses and falls out. In other words, the volumes of water that will fall to the ground will increase in direct proportion to the warming of our ocean. What does that indicate? It indicates that the current situation with those flooding events is only the beginning. There are going to be much worse events of this kind, and this is inevitable. What else does it lead to? Again, if you look at this process as a whole, it is actually the work of the immune system of our planet at a time when, our planet, our ocean, while the ocean is the source of life, we cannot survive without it. We humans are part of the ocean. We are made of water for the most part. You have to understand all this. We originated from water, and we are still related to the moisture of this world. The only difference between us and the ocean is that the ocean absorbs carbon dioxide and releases oxygen, while we do the opposite. But now the ocean is releasing carbon dioxide, and the question is, why is this happening? Yes, these are processes, the ocean is dying, but these are defense mechanisms again. It is the planet's way of trying to protect itself, and us. Whereas in fact, now I'm going to get on the nerves of all those CO2 fans. Excuse me, friends, but this is true. Right now, we need the amount of CO2 in our atmosphere to increase. Why? Because it's a defense. Because CO2 restrains the redistribution of heat, which we desperately need. Our atmosphere is getting thinner. These are facts, they have been proven. The electromagnetic field of our planet is disrupted, and it continues to weaken, which means that our atmosphere is sagging and getting lower. It means that more and more cosmic and solar radiation is coming, to our Earth, to our planet. This has even more impact in addition to the cycle, this cyclic radiation which destabilizes our core, causing the heating of huge masses of magma and therefore the crust and the ocean, and it is happening from below, increasing the volume of this magma, slowly and gradually tearing our planet apart. But the speed is actually increasing, exponentially increasing, and the problems are also increasing exponentially. However, we don't see it. Do you understand? And that's the paradox. Meanwhile, we are fighting CO2. And you know, friends, the next step of the planet's immune system to defend itself and us will be a release of massive amounts of CO2. I'll put it in an understandable language. There will be volcanic eruptions on a massive scale. It's a cycle, and we can trace this in every cycle, especially in the 24,000-year cycle. Why? Because that's how the immune system of our planet works. That's the point. It's extremely detrimental to us. Yes, some life might remain in this process, and it could remain, and we could survive as well, even if it's a small group, but we could remain. The question is, will we survive under the current progression? Let me give you a simple example. The cycle always started according to a certain program. The dates are known, everything has been calculated. It is the year 2024. We knew about it a long time ago. Others knew about it too. It's not true that they didn't know. They knew. The keepers knew, as well as various organizations. And there was a lot of talk about it. Yes, even if it was not in the media, it was talked about and hinted at. Why? Because this information has always been in plain sight. We just didn't pay attention and didn't notice it. And that's the point, that the process should have started in the year 2024. But when did it start? A long time ago. It means what is happening now is the pre-peak state of a normal cycle. Imagine what will happen during the cycle. I'll explain for those who don't understand how serious it all is. Let's take a simple example. We build a house, a modern house, with good heat insulation and everything else, with all the new technology. We don't need air conditioning. Why? Because the house is so well constructed, its thermal conductivity is practically zero. And even during the hottest period, a few days at the end of July, even at this time, the house remained cool. Why would we need air conditioning, although the heat started at the beginning of May and lasted until the end of September? We felt comfortable and cool in our house, both in summer and in winter. And now imagine, the heat started in May. We opened windows and doors wide, and we have heat and stuffiness in May, while the peak is in July, at the end of July. What will happen to us and to this house which seems to be protected to the utmost when our windows and doors are open? This is how it actually happened, that we opened the windows and doors much earlier. And pardon me, this is indeed an anthropogenic factor. Why? Because we killed the ocean. It is us, people, who created this situation. And we should have already resuscitated our patient, so to say, like in the intensive care unit a long time ago. But we didn't even send him to therapy. Moreover, we recommended him to undergo outpatient treatment by a Chinese method, to drink more hot water. So now the ocean is heating up its waters because of our stupidity. We are stupid. Didn't we see what was going on? We saw it. Didn't we realize that the CO2 theory is merely someone's business? Yes, it's a big and serious business based on our trust, but we supported it. Even those who understood that all this is untrue, to put it mildly, that it is merely someone's business. And there were even people who spoke up, but they were suppressed by the public opinion and the like. And do you know what is funny? That a lot of people perceived this dominant image of CO2 as reality. It was convenient for consciousness, and we all believed that everything would soon come back to normal, yet the progression was growing every year. And what do we see now? Let's just look at the events which took place recently. Let's take China. How much it was flooded and what events occurred there. Then there was also an earthquake. The situation is unpleasant in general, isn't it? And it wasn't covered much in the media. But why do they keep silent about it? Instead, they talk about how not we, but the princes of this world oppose all sorts of bad countries, wars and whatnot. How united everyone is and what a great job they are doing, moreover all the parties. And they all say that they are taking care of us. But why don't they take care of themselves? A simple question. After all, everyone should have been sitting at the same table a long time ago and deciding how to survive. Didn't they know it? Don't those very leaders of China really understand and know that their country is doomed? There will remain only 2 small areas of land where people will be able to more or less survive. And this will come soon. Let's put it simply, China is powerful, industrial, has the mightiest economy, is a very developed country, while in fact, it's a giant with feet of clay that is being washed away. You see how simple everything is. And this applies not only to China, but to all other countries as well. Yes, we can, let's say, as humanity, build shelter cities and prolong our existence in this climatic chaos for a short period of time, but we will not live long there. And the outcome will still be the same as on Mars. Yet, does it make any sense? A simple question. Of course it doesn't. Yes, we can continue to do nothing, to live the way we do now, continue to hate each other, to be divided, based on all sorts of images imposed on us, to pay attention to and invest our lives in an illusion, yet another illusion that may be imposed on us again. How will it all end? You see, one doesn't have to be super smart to understand, just add 2 plus 2 and we'll get the result. I mean, evaluate the progression even over several years, look at what is happening. And what is happening now is no longer a joke. It's already a need for resuscitation at the very least. So why aren't we people doing anything? Because we know nothing and have no skills. Because science is fragmented. Although the first thing all princes should have decided to do now is to cease all strife and divisions. The second thing they should have done is to unite all sciences and provide scientists with everything they need, without any limits whatsoever. We cannot scheme on the things that save us. They should have brought together the best and brightest people a long time ago and given them an opportunity. Meanwhile, the majority of scientists don't even realize that we can still do something. And the worst part is that the vast majority of them don't even suspect what awaits us. They don't even think in that direction. That's where the trouble is. Neither do our princes think about it. Do they really think? Do they believe in what is happening and what will happen in literally a few years? In a very short period of time? No, they don't. Do you know why? Because no one has told them about it, and no one has proven it to them. A lot of people will say, you prove it. Let me explain, friends. In order for us to prove to our scientific world what is happening, we need years to break through this scientific armor in every discipline, I'll put it this way. You see? For instance, it took the UN 19 years to realize that there was a problem with the ocean. Imagine it took them 19 years to merely adopt an agreement to protect the world's oceans. I mean, it took them 19 years to negotiate an agreement that there is something wrong with the ocean. 19 years. We don't have that much time. We don't have that time at all. While in order for us to communicate to the princes of this world the obvious fact that our planet is dying, we need to bow down before a bunch of leaders in our scientific community who have almost zero knowledge of science. I'm sorry, I'll call things by their proper names. Why? Because, yes, they are good leaders, and many of them are famous and reputable. while in actual fact they don't know science. If they understood and knew it, they would have been with us a long time ago. After all, we have a lot of scientists at Alatra who have been with us for a long time. You see how simple everything is? These scientists do know and understand, but can they break through that wall? No, of course. They can't. As soon as some of them report what's going on, they lose all opportunities to continue working. How many of our participants have lost their jobs simply for calling things by their proper names? You see how alternative opinions are suppressed in our world. It's not the way it is supposed to be, and they were immediately labeled as pseudoscientists. I don't want to talk about this. Do you know why? Because when people want to save the world, they don't want to save it for themselves. Well, for themselves too, and for their family and friends. When they talk about what is true and obvious, and people don't want to hear them, you know, they start thinking, maybe we are crazy, maybe everybody else knows better. Knows better. When cities are being washed away, when earthquakes are claiming lots of lives, and that's just the tip of the iceberg, that's not even the beginning. But when people understand that, and they don't have the ability to communicate it to those who are supposed to be making decisions, this would discourage many people, many but not us. We understand perfectly well that we have a chance. We have a chance to build a creative society. We have that chance. But again, to do this, we need to convey information to people. Do you see what the complexity is? Many people, even when they hear about the creative society, perceive it as a pig in a poke. They don't know who's in the poke. They see that it is something alive, but who is it? A devil, a goat, or a rabbit? Well, there's just a kitty there, a sweet and beautiful kitty, but they don't see that. They see a beautiful sign on this poke and that's it. Well, in order for people to realize and understand the full value and importance of the creative society, for which some individuals who are not our friends at all create such a negative image, influencing and putting a kind of nocebo on the best of what humanity has now, the creative society. It's tough, of course. So in order for a person to make the right choice and understand that the creative society is our chance, he must receive full information about the creative society. He must understand that all the volunteers of the creative society are spreading this information and explaining it to people not to get something for themselves, but to share the world that we are going to get, even with those who are now against the creative society. You see how everything is simple and complicated at the same time. But that's the way the world is arranged. You can't get away from it. And there's no reason to give up. It's just a reason to roll up one's sleeves. And indeed, today, by informing other people, volunteers of the creative society are increasing the chances of survival for the whole of humanity. The question is whether we will do it on time or not. Everything is in our hands. Everything depends on us, on people, on those who spread this information and on those who hear it, whether they are able to understand the essence of the creative society and realize how important it is for them, for their grandchildren, for their posterity in general, as well as for themselves. That's what is important, because the opportunities that are now opening up to humanity and therefore to each and every human are truly enormous, and the most important thing is to survive. Some people say, this is manipulation again. Manipulation on our part, that we are supposedly scaring people with the climate and promising them a sweet carrot to change the consumerist format into a creative one. And you know, I understand people who think like that. They have been lied to all their lives. They have been living in lies and substitutions all their lives, and they are incapable of distinguishing truth from lies. Simply incapable. And they are also too lazy to investigate and study for themselves. In order to remove doubts In order to remove negative images imposed by someone, we have to study and delve into it ourselves. If we do not do this, what is happening so far in certain countries will soon be happening everywhere, and many times stronger. This is not scaremongering, this is an ordinary scientific forecast. I mean, this is mathematics. And you cannot fool mathematics, no matter how much you want to, and whether we believe in it or not. What is going to happen will happen, because we as humanity, let's put it so, have already made our own choice. We have not listened to the prophets. You know, some people say, everything happens by God's will. It will be as God decides, but God has actually decided otherwise, and He has shown His will many times by sending His prophets, His messengers who told us how we should live and what the world should be like. Why didn't we listen to them? It's clear that a lot has been changed by those very architects, but it was all done in front of our eyes. We saw the truth. We supported what was materially beneficial to us, but we didn't support what God sent us, what was really necessary for us. If we had listened to God then and accepted His will, everything would have changed. I think people of faith should think about that. Again, speaking about the creative society, I still want to convey one idea for understanding by all of us, by all of humanity. As a matter of fact, in our consumerist format, God is replaced with money. Our God is money. We talk about God, we talk about faith and religion, but what has perverted everything? What has changed our life? What has turned it into this chaos, and why are we manipulated so easily? Just because we have elevated money to the rank of our God and made it our dominant image. That's the point. This is what we have in the consumerist format, whereas in the creative society, the highest value will be human life, the life of every human being. Your life, my friend, will be the highest value. After all, it is worth building a world where human life would be the highest value, which means that everything should work, exist, and be done in order to improve human life, to make it better, more pleasant, more proper, healthier, and happier. There is actually a difference, you have to agree. A very important point is that in order to build the creative society, we must certainly do it non-violently, without using any deceitful manipulations, without using any violence or any revolutions. It is not even allowed. Just look how wonderful this is. In the creative society, if you live in your country, you mustn't do anything against authorities in that country. In other words, you must be a patriot of your country. You must respect the authorities. You must be a law-abiding citizen. And this is also the essence of the creative society. But at the same time, we are all united by one idea: survival and making life beautiful for everyone. It will not work any other way. After all, if we behave wrong towards our own country, advocating change of government or something else, we create and intensify the chaos. And hence, we create conditions for people to suffer. While the creative society cannot be built on anyone's suffering, that's the meaning of the creative society. Even from the beginning of its construction, you can see how the creative society differs from the consumerist format. In the consumerist format, the highest value is money, while in the creative society, it is human life. I would really like people to understand this, but it's up to people to choose. God is one, and all the messengers who came spoke about the same essence, about one truth. Everything in their teachings boils down to the 8 pillars of the creative society. Take a look and compare. You don't have to be exceptionally smart to understand that. Pardon me, the 8 pillars of the creative society are adapted for all people to understand. They are very simple in their essence and meaning. Is this really complicated? After all, it concerns our lives, it concerns the lives of our relatives and friends, and it concerns our entire planet, our common home. We have one God, we have one planet, and we have one life. Everything is very simple, but we can make the world beautiful. We can do it if we make it in time, if people hear and understand us. However, we should do our best for that. Everything is simple, friends. The winner is the one who doesn't give up. In any case, we will fulfill our duty. Such is our destiny, and what people choose is what will happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, friends. Peace and God's love be with you.